Okay, hello everybody. Welcome. Now, I know that for the first time, you're looking inside of my house. And this is actually this is my study. This is where I study Torah all day long. I try to study Torah all day long in here. And you might be wondering, why are you inside when you have such a beautiful view outside? Why is it that you're inside your house when it's so beautiful outside? So I got to tell you the craziest thing that just happened here in Eretz Yisrael. And if you're in Eretz Yisrael, maybe it happened where you live, maybe it didn't happen where you live, I don't know. But I'll tell you just the absolute craziest thing. Today, the doctors in Eretz Yisrael said it's best if nobody leaves their house at all anymore. Now, you're still allowed to leave your house if you have to, but it's better if you don't leave your house. That's what the doctor said. So, and then they made an announcement. They put it all over the internet, and they put it on the radio and on the television, and they put it everywhere. People shouldn't leave their house. It's better not to. And then, right after they made that announcement, the biggest wins started. Really big wins. I have chairs outside. The chairs were taken away, and now I can't stand outside. So it's almost like Hashem is saying, listen, you have to listen to the doctors. You might not like what they say. You might say, why is it that the doctors are telling us that we can't go to school and we can't play with our friends and we can't go to our favorite places? Why are they saying all these things that I don't like? But we have to listen to them because that's what's very important. So I'm so happy that everybody's joined me again today, and we're going to tell a great story about today. It's not just going to be about one big Talmid Chacham, it's going to be about a lot of them. We're going to learn about a lot of big Talmidei Chachamim and something that happened to them, and it's going to be amazing, this story. It's going to be absolutely incredible. What a great story we're going to have today. And I'm so happy that you joined me to learn Torah. This is our third time that we're learning together. Some of you, this is your third time. Some of you, this is your first time. Some of you, it's your second time. Whatever it is, but it's all great. This is what we're going to do. We're going to have a great story. And this story also took place where I live in Eretz Yisrael, and it took place here, but a long time ago. A little more than 2,000 years ago. That's a long, long time ago. Now, it's been almost a year since Lag BaOmer. I don't know if you remember Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer, sometimes we make fires depending on where you live. We have music, and some of us have barbecues. In Israel, a lot of people on Lag BaOmer go to a big mountain in the north of Israel, a big, big mountain called Har Meron. And on top of Har Meron, there's a kever there. There's somebody's kever. There's where Shimon Bar Yochai is buried. And there's a big party on Lag BaOmer there. Such a big, big party on Lag BaOmer at Har Meron. And that's where Shimon Bar Yochai is buried. And Shimon Bar Yochai, I don't know if you've ever heard of him before. He was a huge Talmid Chacham. What a big Talmid Chacham Shimon Bar Yochai was. He knew so much Torah. Talmid Chacham is somebody who knows a lot of Torah, and we call them a Rav. We call him a rabbi. That's why he's Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. His first name was Shimon, like my first name is Uri, and his father's name was Yochai. So he's Rav Shimon Bar. Bar means the son of Yochai. So that's what his name was. Then they didn't really have last names. Like today, we all have a last name. My last name is Pilichowski. His last name, he didn't have one, so they would call you by, you're the son of your father. Just like if your father gets called up to the Torah, that's what they say. They say, the son of this person. When you get called up to the Torah, they're going to call you up and say, you're the son of somebody. Whatever your father's name is. That's what it is. I'm called up by Uri Yitzchak ben Shmuel, because my father's name is Shmuel. Okay. Now you understand Rosh Shimon Bar Yochai, where he gets his name from. Now Rosh Shimon Bar Yochai, unfortunately, when he died a long, long time ago, it was the 33rd day of the Omer, Lag BaOmer. So on Lag BaOmer, everybody remembers Rosh Shimon Bar Yochai, and they go to the place he's buried, and they daven there, they pray there, and that's where they have a big party there to remember Rosh Shimon Bar Yochai. Okay, great. So this story is about Rosh Shimon Bar Yochai, and this is what a story this is. Are you guys ready for this story? This is an incredible story. But if you remember when we told the story the first time of Rabbi Akiva, we talked about how a little over 2,000 years ago in Eretz Yisrael, there were some really bad people that lived here. They don't live anymore. They're not in Eretz Yisrael anymore, and they don't even exist anymore. They're gone. Okay, so we don't have to worry about them. These were bad people, but again, we don't have to worry about them anymore. And their names were the Romans. Okay, and they came from a place called Rome. Now today, there's still a city called Rome in a country called Italy, but the people that live there are not the same Romans that 2,000 years ago were really bad people who came to Eretz Yisrael. Now, why were they bad people? They came to Eretz Yisrael. They were actually invited by the Melech Yisrael. The Melech Yisrael at the time was from the Choshmanaim. Who remembers the Choshmanaim? Who remembers that name? Think about it for a second. Where does Choshmanaim come from? The Hanukkah story, right? The Choshmanaim were from Hanukkah. So they were the kings after they won against the Yevanim on the Hanukkah story. They were the kings for a long time, a couple hundred years. And one of their kings invited the Romans to come to Eretz Yisrael. And they came to Eretz Yisrael. He didn't just invite them for a vacation. He didn't say, hey, come, we're gonna have Hanukkah. Come celebrate Hanukkah. Or Purim with us. Or come for Pesach to my house. That's not what they said. They said, come here and maybe you'll rule a little. And you'll come in, you'll help us a little, and you get to control. And it really wasn't a good idea to invite them in because the Romans came in and they thought that they would get to rule over the Jewish people. And the Jewish people didn't think that at all. The Jewish people, who's our king? Our real Melech is Hashem. Hashem is our real Melech. And which laws do we follow? We follow the laws of the Torah. So if the Romans came in and said, listen, from now on you're going to follow our rules, the Jewish people are going to say, no, no, no. And that kept happening. The Romans said, we want you to do this. And the Jews said, we don't do that. That's against our Torah. And the Romans said, well, we're in charge now. And the Jews said, no, no, no. Only Hashem is in charge. And they started fighting the Romans and the Jews. The Romans were a strong army. So they started having these problems between the Romans and the Jews. And as time went on, the Romans stayed longer and longer inside of Eretz Yisrael. They spent more and more time inside of Eretz Yisrael. And when they stayed in Eretz Yisrael, the Romans looked around and they said, the bridges aren't so good here. They're a little shaky. And there's a lot of rivers in Israel that don't have bridges, and we can't cross the rivers so well. And then they travel all around Eretz Yisrael, and they say, you know what? The roads aren't so good. Our horses, their feet get stuck in the roads. And then they would look at some of the buildings, and they'd say, that building isn't built so well. We want to make it nicer and bigger. We want a better building. So that's what they would do. They would build better buildings. And the Romans started making Eretz Yisrael even better than it was at first. And look, it was really nice what they did. They made Eretz Yisrael beautiful. They built buildings, and they built roads, and they built bridges, and they did all of these things that made Eretz Yisrael a lot better and a lot nicer than it was. Okay, that's what they started doing, and that was great. So that was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. They were building all this stuff, and Eretz Yisrael was getting nicer. But again, the Romans were not nice people, because while they were making Eretz Yisrael better, they were also being mean to the Jews that lived there. So people didn't really like that at all. That was a big problem. Okay, so what happened? One day, Rosh Bar Yochai, what would Rosh Bar Yochai do all day long? Rosh Bar Yochai would learn Torah. And what would all the other rabbis do all day long? They would also learn Torah all day long. Some of them went to work, right? Yesterday we talked about how Hillel HaZaken would go to work. But a lot of times the rabbis, when they were done with working, they would get together and they would sit in a group and they would learn Torah in a group. And that's what they did. Perfect, right? That's perfect, okay? So they would sit and they would learn Torah in a group. And this was three rabbis. Three rabbis got together and they learned in a group. What were their names? So one, like we said, was Rosh Bar Yochai. One was Rabbi Yehuda. and one was Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, and Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. And the three of them were sitting around, and there was another person there. Okay, there was one other person. His name was also Yehuda. He wasn't a Rav. He wasn't a rabbi. His name was also Yehuda, and he also sat there. His name was Yehuda ben Gerim. So it's three rabbis sitting around having a discussion, learning Torah together, and Yehuda ben Gerim is sitting and listening. And he's probably learning Torah. Maybe he's taking notes and listening to what they're saying. It is perfect. Okay, and this is what they would do all day long. And Rabbi Yehuda turns to Rabbi Yossi and Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, and he says, on my way to getting together with you guys today to learn some Torah together, I took this new road that the Romans just built. And it was quicker. The horse went with no problem. It was smooth. It was nice. And it was really even a shorter road because they built like a shortcut to it. So it was a great thing. It was it's amazing what the Romans have done here. I am so happy with the construction and the new roads and the new bridges that the Romans built. It's amazing. And then he turned to his two friends, to Rabbi Yossi and Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, to see what they would say. Rabbi Yossi was silent. He didn't say anything. He was quiet. He didn't say a word. He just sat there and was absolutely silent. Okay? He's not talking. So it's Rav Shimon Bar Yochai's turn. Rav Shimon Bar Yochai says, let me tell you something. Listen carefully. Do you know why they built the nicer roads? Do you know why they built nicer bridges? Do you have any idea why they did this? Let me tell you. They built all these things for themselves. And they did it not to make it better for the Jews. They did it to make it better for themselves and so that they could do bad things. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda look at him. And Yehuda ben Gerim looks at him and says, what do you mean? And he says, listen, you go on their roads, and the minute you get on their road, there's a person that stands there with a big sword, and he says, you have to pay me to drive on this road. I have to pay him? This is my land. How can he tell me I have to pay him? Why does he get to say that? Because he built the road. And why did he build the road? He didn't build the road so it would be easier for me to drive. He built the road so he can make money off of me. And you know why he's got nicer bridges? Because they want to go from one place to the other place to do something the Torah says you're not allowed to do. That's why they did it. You can't give them shevach. You can't praise them. You can't say good things about them that they did these things. These weren't good things that they did. These are very bad things that they did. They built these roads for bad reasons. Well, Rabbi Yossi still said nothing, and Rabbi Yehuda obviously disagreed with him because he said the Romans were good. But this Yehuda ben Gerim did something that really wasn't nice. He did something really, really not nice. He went to the Romans. That's right. He went to the Romans, and he said to the Romans, this was really bad what he did. He told them what was supposed to be a secret. Well, that conversation that he heard between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi and Rav Shimon Bar Yochai was a secret for them to hear, and Yehuda ben Gerim was allowed to be there. But it was a secret. It wasn't something for him to say. It was an absolute secret. He shouldn't have repeated it. But he went to the Romans, and he said to the Romans, he said, I want to tell you something. There were three big Jewish rabbis. Three big Jewish rabbis. And they were sitting around having a conversation about you, the Romans. And they said, really? Now the Romans knew that these three big rabbis, if they said something good or bad, the Jews would listen to them because they're their rabbis. And if they said something good, then that would be very good because the Jews would think very well of the Romans. But if they said something bad, then the Jews would think bad of the Romans, and maybe they would stop listening to them, and that would be bad. So that's what they said. So he went ahead, and this is what they did. They said, well, what did they say? So Yehuda ben Gerim said, let me tell you. I'll tell you what they said. Rabbi Yehuda said, you guys are wonderful, because you built all these beautiful roads that are so smooth and we get from place to place. And he said he took one of the roads that very morning and he loved it. It was so good. Great. who's this Rabbi Yehuda? Tell us where he lives. He says, why do you want to know where he lives? We're going to give him a great job. It's going to pay him a lot of money, and he's going to have a lot of kavod. And you know what? Maybe we'll even let him go on the roads without paying. He said something nice about us. We are going to give him a great reward. Okay? Here's his address. And what did the other two say? What did Rabbi Yossi say? Well, Rabbi Yossi stayed silent. What do you mean he said it? He didn't say anything? No, he didn't say anything. He didn't say anything nice about us? Nope. He didn't say anything nice about us at all. We built all these roads, nothing. He's just quiet. Well, then he's going to get a punishment. He has to move to a faraway city called Sipori, and he has to live all the way up there by himself. Whoa. Yehuda ben Gerim didn't see that coming. He had no idea. So he said, okay. He said, wait a minute, there was a third person there, the Roman said. What did that third person, you said his name was Rav Shimon bar Yochai? What did he say? Yehuda ben Gerim doesn't know what to do now. He says, well, I'll tell you. He didn't say the nicest things about you. Really? And now the Romans sit up. They grab their spears and they're listening. And what did he say exactly? Well, he said you built the roads just to charge us money, and you had no right to do that because it's not your land. And you built the bridges for yourself and to do bad things that the Torah doesn't allow you to do. He said, really? You said that? They all looked at each other, all the Romans. And he said, and where does this Rav Shimon bar Yochai live? Oh, it's not important where he lives. He's not that important of a person. Really? Because at the beginning, Yehuda ben Gerim, you said that Rav Shimon bar Yochai is one of the most important rabbis ever. And now you're telling me he's not that important? You're lying. Tell us where he lives. So he told them. And the Romans said, soldiers, get your swords. Go kill Rav Shimon bar Yochai. No one talks about the Romans that way. Yehuda ben Gerim runs out and he announces, the Romans are going to come and they're going to kill Rav Shimon bar Yochai. So Rav Shimon bar Yochai hears this and he gets scared and he says, okay, we've got to hide. Where should we hide? So they decide to hide in the Beit Midrash. The Romans aren't going to look there. Okay? The Romans never go into the Beit Midrash. So Shimon bar Yochai, and he has a son. His son was also a big Talmid Chacham. His son's name was Rabbi Eliezer. They go to hide in the Beit Midrash. And they go into the Beit Midrash, and every day they would learn Torah there. And every day, with Shimon bar Yochai's wife and Rabbi Eliezer's mother, same person, right? They would go and they would bring them food into the Beit Midrash. And for a whole year, they never left the Beit Midrash. They would hide there. And the Romans were looking everywhere for them. Now, I don't know why the Romans didn't think to look in the Beit Midrash. It seems a little funny to me that they would look everywhere. His house, the Beit Knesset, the shul. They look everywhere, the synagogue. They look everywhere, but they didn't look inside. The Beit Midrash is a little silly, but they never looked. But then Rav Shimon bar Yochai sits there and says, listen, says to his son, it's been a whole year. The Romans haven't found us. Soon they're going to get desperate. Soon they're going to really want to find us. And we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to hide somewhere else because this is what they're going to do. They're going to take Ima, mom. They're going to take my wife and they're going to hold her captive. And maybe they'll hurt her until she tells them where they are. So we have to go hide where no one knows where we are, even your mother. So they give hugs and kisses to their mom and to their wife, and they go hide in a cave. Now, I have to tell you something. I'm going to break the story in the middle and tell you, today, you can go in Israel and drive all the way to the north of Israel, all the way up where the grass is green and it's beautiful, and you can go to the cave. We know where the cave is that they hid out. You could go to that cave. And I went to that cave. I took my children to that cave. And that cave is very small. And they would hide in the cave. And what they would do is, they would hide with the sand. They would bury themselves in the sand all the way up to their necks so that their clothes wouldn't get bother them, and bugs wouldn't bother them. And then when it came time to daven, and it came time to pray, to be mitpalel, they would come out of the sand, and they would uncover themselves, they would pray, and then they would bury themselves again. Now, one year they hid in the Beit Midrash. But this time, they didn't just hide for a year in the cave. Not 2 years, not 5 years, not 10, 13 years they hid in the cave, and they didn't see anybody else. Now you'll say, wait a minute, hold on a second. 13 years in the cave, what do they eat? So I'll tell you, Hashem made a mace, a miracle. A tree popped up right outside the cave, and it had fruit on it, and they would eat the fruit of the tree, and that's how they lived. Amazing, right? Well, they lived in the cave for 13 years. And after 13 years, they finally came out of the cave. The Romans, at that time, they said, we're not going to kill them. We couldn't find them. It's been 13 years. We're done. They came out of the cave, and you imagine they were very happy. And Rosh Hashanah comes out of the cave, and he hasn't really moved in that long. So he's got a lot of trouble moving. It's very hard for him to move his arms and his body and to walk. He hasn't really walked in 13 years. Him and his son are having trouble walking. And then they decide they're going to go shower. They haven't showered in 13 years. Whew! It was only by a nace they didn't smell. 13 years they didn't shower. So they decided they're going to go to the bath. And then they used to have these big baths. And they go into the bath. And Rosh Shimon Bar Yochai is in the bath. And his son-in-law, the man that married his daughter, is helping Rosh Shimon Bar Yochai get clean. And he sees he has cuts all over his body. Painful cuts from being in the cave for so long. These really painful cuts. And he says, Abba, Dad, Father, look at all these cuts on your body. It's so horrible. And Shimon Bar Yochai says, don't look at the cuts on my body. Look at how much Torah I learned when I was in the cave. Because what did Shimon Bar Yochai and his son Elazar do when they were in the cave for 13 years? The only thing they could do, they were stuck in the cave. What could they do? They could only learn Torah. And for 13 years they learned Torah. And they learned so much Torah. There was nothing else to do, so they loved to learning Torah anyway before they went into the cave. And now they go into the cave and they absolutely love learning Torah, so they learned so much Torah in the cave, and it was amazing. So Shimon Bar Yochai says, don't look at the cuts on my body. That's not important. You know what's important? Look at how much Torah Eliezer, my son, and I got to learn in those 13 years. It was a gift from Hashem that we got to be in that cave. Amazing. What an attitude. Who would have ever thought to think that way? To say, I know my body hurts so much, and I have all these cuts, and I can't walk that well, but I'm so happy, because look how much Torah I got to learn. That's amazing. Now let me tell you something. This happened 2,000 years ago, but it's also true today. I have to tell you, I was in this room for 10 days, not 10 years, not 13 years, not even 1 year, 10 days, and I wasn't allowed to go out of the room. I wasn't allowed to leave. It was something called in Hebrew, bidud, or quarantine. I had to stay here. For a half an hour every day, I was allowed to go right on the porch and tell you a story from the outside. But other than that, I didn't leave. And I wasn't allowed to touch my children. I wasn't allowed to give them a hug. They weren't allowed to come into the room with me. And a lot of us now have to stay in our houses. And we've got to stay in our house and we say, but I want to go out and play. Nope. I want to go out and go to the restaurant. Nope, can't go out and get pizza. I want to go out here and I want to go out there. And mom and dad and the doctors, a lot of us are saying, no, you have to stay inside. Can't go to school. Can't go here. Can't go there. Can't. Oh, here's no. Can't. And it sounds really bad. But maybe we could all be like Rosh Shimon Bar Yochai. And instead of looking at our cuts and now we can't walk, and instead of looking at we're stuck inside and we can't go to school, we can't go to our friends, instead, what do we say? Well, it gives us a chance to do a lot of things. We can learn more Torah, spend more time with our parents, do fun things like listen to stories from people that live in Eretz Yisrael and in Mitzvah Yericho, and there's new things that we can do. And if we look around and we say, wow, let's have a different attitude. Let's look at all the wonderful things that we can do now. Look at all the great things, the opportunities that we have. Let's look there, and then we'll be so happy. So that's the story for today. Rishon Bar Yochai was stuck in a cave for 13 years, and he didn't walk out and say, "Oh, this stinks. I hated it. I don't like it." And he didn't whine. He didn't complain. He said, "Look at what I got to do during that time." And that's what we should think of, how much time we get to have. It's an amazing, amazing lesson. And if your brother or sister didn't hear it, or maybe your mom and dad didn't hear it, tell them the story. And tell them, here's a way that we can have a better attitude. Shalom to all. I'll see you here tomorrow. Bye-bye.